Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious. Here at the American Space Museum in downtown Titusville, we are broadcasting to you from the Hyatt Place Studios inside our wonderful, humble, nonprofit museum that is just 11 miles from where the Artemis rocket is poised on Pad 39B and just a few blocks from Spaceview Park, where for 20 years have been monuments to the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo and Shuttle programs with space workers like you, your name out there on bricks, marble, or on the pylons out there, celebrating our American space program like none other. There's 35 handprints of Apollo, Mercury, Gemini astronauts out there at this Spaceview Park. And that's how our whole museum started. And we are so blessed to have you on board on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Spotify. Once in a while we have some hiccups, so if we don't go on time, then please look up the video library that we have on our platforms and enjoy a wonderful program. We've got a good program today with Marty Winkle, my co-producer, and working our Streamlabs program here to bring you some fancy images in a beautiful way to celebrate space history. Today we're specifically have some astronaut birthdays and some very important shuttle missions to celebrate as we celebrate the shuttles of the month of April. And we wanted to make sure that you are with us on April 12th, which is the 42nd anniversary of the launch of STS-1, for this man, Mr. Jim Harrington. Mr. Harrington launched 22 shuttles in 95, 96, and 97, 7 or 8 of them to the Russian Mir. And you're going to enjoy a conversation with Mr. Jim Harrington, who just not only was a shuttle launch director, but he had an illustrious career working for America's Space Agency. You're not going to want to miss that. April 12th. And April 16th, on a Saturday, we're going to celebrate the golden anniversary of the dawn of the Space Shuttle era at the Hyatt Place Hotel in Titusville, where we partnered to have some events this year. Free admission, come and rub elbows with at least 2 astronauts, Mike McCulley and Winston Scott, and a whole bunch of space workers that we call national treasures here at the American Space Museum, and we're not joking. Our American space workers have done things that no other country has done, and we're the world leaders, we know, in space, and we're going to continue to be so. So that's part of our celebration here, that we're going to kick off this event and make it an annual event, calling it Shuttle Fest, around the April 12th date of the launch of America's first reusable spaceship, Columbia. And we want to bring you from time to time what we're going to call Stott-isms of the day from Nicole Stott, a great friend of our museum, earthling, astronaut, and artist. And the first Stott-ism of the day we're going to share with you that Nicole loves to say is, live like a crew, not like passengers. And this is from her wonderful book, Return to Earth, where she talks about solutions to the global pandemic. Back to Earth, I think it's called. So we're going to share with you some of the poignant sayings that Nicole has from time to time sprinkled throughout her book. And we love the saying, live like a crew, not like passengers, because on Spaceship Earth, we need everybody to help each other sustain our beautiful spaceship in our solar system. Well, Marty, we've got a happy birthday to this very popular European astronaut, Paulo Nespoli, Nespoli. Happy 65th birthday. He was born in Milan, Italy on April 6, 1957. 313 days in space on 3 missions, including 2 extended stays on the space station. Quite an interesting astronaut. I know Nicole and all the Apollo or all the shuttle astronauts know him. Here he is actually presenting the Pope a few years ago his own blue jumpsuit that the astronauts love to wear. So that's kind of interesting. And also during his Expedition 27, his mother died. on May 4th, 2011. And the crew observed 1 minute of silence the following day around the time of her funeral. And I mean, how unusual would that to lose your mother while you're in space up there? His third space flight was at age 60. So Paulie Nispali's really had a great career, and we wanted to celebrate his birthday, one of the European astronauts that has done a lot to advance us in what we've learned about living on the space station. I was looking for any other notes about him. He's New York School of Polytech University trained. And when he talked to the Holy Father here in 2017, the event was broadcast on Italian television. And we've got another astronaut birthday yesterday, Marty. We had Hugh Harris, the voice of NASA, talking about the 16 space shuttles launched in the month of April. And we didn't get to the birthday of a record-setting astronaut. Of course, you all know who this is, Franklin Chang Diaz. Was born April 5th, 1950 in San Jose, Costa Rica, to a Spanish mother and a Chinese father. And Chang Diaz is tied with Jerry Ross for the most American crewed launches, all 7 on a space shuttle. Well, Marty, I think we need to add John Young in there because John Young had 6 launches off the Earth, and then 50 years ago he was launched off the moon on Apollo 16. They landed April 16th, 1972, and I think they blasted off. They landed around on April 20th and spent 3 days. But you got to count John Young's launch off of the moon as his 7th space launch. Chang Diaz is quite an outstanding person. He has been involved with the Ad Astra rocket company since his retirement. He became a U.S. citizen in 1977. And just MIT PhD in plasma physics, and he's very involved in the space program, the private sector. So happy 72nd birthday to Chang Diaz. Well, we love celebrating shuttles every month, all month. We're going to give you the shuttles of April, and here is 16 shuttles launched in the month of April. From 1981, the very first shuttle on April 12th, all the way up to 2001, 2002, STS-110 there is launched on the 8th. A lot of early flights in the month, and we're going to talk about a couple of them real quick. But those 16 shuttles represent 95 astronauts launched to space. However, 5 of them flew twice in the month of April, and Jerry Ross, who we just talked about, being the record-setting 7 launches off Earth, Jerry had 3 of his 7 flights in April. How interesting is that? And we'll highlight those with a little program on Jerry Ross on Stay Curious one day. But on September 4th, you had 2 shuttles launched, STS-6 in 1983 and then STS-83 in 1997. The STS-6 is a very famous mission for the first EVAs by Peterson and Story Musgrave, Don Peterson and Story Musgrave, and it deployed the TDRS satellite. The STS-83 is also kind of infamous because it was to stay up for 10 days, and after 3 days, one of the CPU units failed, and they brought it back early, and then they reflew the entire crew on a mission later to finish that program. So, and then we've got launched on the 5th, which was been yesterday. STS-37 deployed the Gamma Ray Observatory, and on that, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Well, I got those up here. I have the individual ones there to talk about these missions. That right now, on April 6th, there are 5 space shuttles in history orbiting Earth with 28 total astronauts. You had STS-6 in 1983, which we talked about, TDRS satellite in the first spacewalk in the confines there. And that was the first spacewalk since the Skylab astronauts did a spacewalk in 1974. And then you had this 83 that was reflown, and I think the reflight was called 94. I'll double check that. Halsell was the pilot commander, and a women pilot, Susan Still, was the pilot for STS-83. And then we also had on this date in history, the banners there's blocking that out there, Marty. That's eight. It doesn't have the number on it, but J. Apt, his name was missing down there. That's STS-37, the Gamma Ray Observatory, where the antenna stuck and they had to do an unplanned EVA with Jerry Ross getting to go out and Nagel, and they did a spacewalk to save that mission basically by literally pulling out the antenna, and Jerry Ross gave it a couple tugs like a good engineer would, and it packed back up there. And then the next mission on this date in history orbiting the Earth is STS-81. It was also launched on April 4th, and it took the Leonardo unit up to the International Space Station, a long mission to do some crew refigurings to the space station on STS-131 in 2010. And then concluding this date in history of 5 shuttles orbiting Earth is STS-41C, which had the original destination of STS-13. And we're going to talk about this mission here in depth here in just a few minutes, because it deployed the LDEF, which is the Long Duration Exposure Facility, and then an astronaut went out and grabbed the defunct Solar Max telescope and brought it back in and repaired it, and that was an amazing mission. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But we wanted to share a little bit of space history with you all today, that in 1972, 50 years ago on April 6th, NASA officially opened for bids the elements that were to decide and make up the international American Space Transportation System, designed to haul satellites to orbit and cargo to space stations like a space truck. The promise by NASA was this space transportation system was going to replace the unmanned Delta, Atlas, and Titan rockets. Well, 50 years later, we know that didn't happen. But so ambitious was the shuttle legacy in the beginning that they boasted of having 3 or 4 shuttle flights every month. And I think the most we've ever done is 9 in a year. So following the usual charade of competitive bidding, NASA picked as prime contractor North American Rockwell because it built the X-15 and the Apollo command modules and could be trusted with the orbiter. And then the Rocketdyne division of Rockwell would be making the engines. Let's look at some of these early concepts. Of course, it was under the Nixon administration, $5 billion project that Nixon pushed to the Congress. And that's why we're celebrating 50 years, the golden anniversary of the shuttle, on April 16th at the Hyatt Place, with a great lineup of speakers that have all got tremendous ties to the beginning of the shuttle program. Well, here was what the shuttle was envisioned to be: crew transportation, delivery of propellants to other, so we could refuel satellites, satellite repair, space station logistics, deployment of a tug system that could go up and maybe retrieve the Hubble telescope and bring it back, and of course planetary probes to be launched in our solar system. And I love some of these early concepts, Marty. Look at that behemoth of a space shuttle there. It looks like one of those big giant galaxy cargo ships like the Pregnant Guppy, doesn't it, Marty? This is a concept from 1970, and the original concepts were for 2 reusable spacecraft. One that was going to be the booster and then land and then take up the orbiter. Now, what we're going to look at here, these are giant slides or chromes or positives, film positives of McDonnell Douglas's concepts out of St. Louis, and we sold these. They were on an overhead projector. That's how big these are. They're the big as a sheet of paper. And so I pulled off some copies of these that we put in our auction when we sold them about 3 or 4 years ago, to give you an idea of some of the early concepts that were being thought about. Look at that. The mothership's got 6 or 7, 8 engines on it there. And then both were designed to be space planes to be completely reused, with different types of wings being used. This one was flown like this, detached on the bottom of, I wonder how that was going to take off, Marty. And there's the re-entry of another concept from McDonnell Douglas. All right, these are back in the 1968, 65, 60, this type frame. There it is landing. Of course, a space plane. They tried different kinds of wings. Marty, see on this one, the wing stubs on the side actually are deployed down by a leg system there, like a piston is what I'm trying to say, and a piston.
Hydraulics.
Yeah, hydraulics there. So it would be tucked in when it was in space, and when it come to Earth, hydraulics would push out the wings there. How cool is that? There's another concept. Let me get some rocket fuel. I'm getting thirsty looking at all these concepts here. And another one. I count 4, 8, about 10 engines on tail number 3 there. But the idea was that all the space, this is a NASA, you see up the top there, the worm logo up there with NASA. These are all concepts that were pitched to the contractors were pitching to NASA. This is our concept of it. Wouldn't it have been nice to have these built? And you know what? The technology was probably there, Marty. It was just the money involved. There's another look at how many engines on that? 2, 6, 10, about 12 engines on the back of that. So here's what we come up with: the Shuttles of April. That was the concepts back in the day, 50 years ago, and here's what it turned into the reality. A little chart that myself and my boss, Executive Director Karen Conklin, have put together. Sort of my cheat sheet, but we're going to kind of massage this and post it on our Facebook for you all to enjoy. Down at the bottom is the days of the month, okay? And then along the side is the number of shuttles that we show. In the colored blocks, or the duration of the mission. So there we go, the 6th, and we see we got STS 6, 83, 37, 131, and 41C. And we're going to have fun with this, seeing what month has the most shuttles launched, what date in history has the most shuttles orbiting Earth, and is there a date on the calendar when there's no shuttles orbiting at all? I think we might find a couple, particularly in December around Christmas time, but we'll see as we go around, and I stay curious as you stay curious. We're going to talk about 41C, launched today in 1984, and that is just a 38 years ago. All right, duh. And so 84 was Challenger. This was the 11th mission of America's Space Transportation System, the 5th for Orbiter Challenger, which STS-6, that was launched April 4th, 1983, was the first of Challenger. This whole mission with these astronauts echoed what was going to be done with the space shuttle. And here we have, left to right, Bob Crippen, excuse me, great friend of our museum, was on our board of directors here at the American Space Museum at one time. And on the far, he was the commander, and on the far right, standing up, is Dick Scobie, Francis Dick Scobie. This was his one-time pilot, and then he was named commander of the Challenger 51L. And of course, faithfully so, because he lost his life. But it's very special to be a one-time pilot and then have a command of a space shuttle. Usually you do that twice, unless you're the early guys like he was here. George Pinky Nelson is right there in front of Scobie with the blonde hair. Launch director Bob Seek always says every time he saw Pinky Nelson, he thought he should have a surfboard under his arm because he had that boyish look to him there. I'm looking here and see who launched. Yeah, Bob Seek did launch this mission. It was the second mission that Bob launched out of his 52 shuttles that Bob Seek launched. In the middle there is James Van Hoften. They called him Ox, was his nickname. And then Terry Hart. Terry Hart, he was a one and done, his last mission, but the others flew very significant missions on that time. Scobie was a rookie. James Van Oxton, he was his first of 2 shuttle flights, and he did 4 EVAs total. And this was George Pinky Nelson's first of 3 flights. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4. You had 4 rookies there, Marty, with Bob Crippen. When it was his 3rd trip to space, and he had 4 rookies with him, and they did a fabulous job. They first deployed the long duration exposure facility, which is shown here on a postcard with the crew there. The long duration exposure facility had all kinds of elements on it, 57 science and technical experiments from more than 250 different companies and colleges and individuals. It was covered with different textures and colored paints and panels of different metals and plastics to stay up in space for about a year. And then it would be brought back, and on its 12 sides, they would see how things were exposed. But and we were going to build Space Station Freedom in 1984. That's right, a solo space station called Freedom. And this was going to be an important long-duration exposure facility called LDEF to see what the harshness of space did to certain types of metals and plastics and other materials. It also had on it some seeds that many of you may have planted the seeds from this. We'll show you a patch about that. Then the second objective was, we want to just jump to the chase that after the Challenger accident in 1986, LDEF was left in the harsh environment of space for 5 years and 7 months. Almost for sure 4 times longer than it was supposed to be in space. And it was a treasure chest of how materials reacted to extended stay in space. And really, because it was in space so much longer, it probably helped us along on the space station and build better things on it. But the real drama, and on that LDEF was seeds in space. And here's the deployment of the LDEF out of the cargo bay. And some of those seeds were tomato seeds mostly, I think, Marty. And the tomato seeds were disseminated to school kids all over the country, and now they're quite a collectible thing in your memorabilia collection if you have one. So there's a patch to go to that. But retrieving an old satellite that had broke down, and there's Pinky Nelson in the man maneuvering unit trying to go out and capture the Solar Max. This was a very daring, non-tethered flight with the man maneuvering unit that had been tested by Bruce McCandless and the other astronaut, I see his face, Stewart. They tested it on STS 41C, I believe. 41B. One of the missions before this had tested this, what Pinky Nelson in the bottom is going out to retrieve the satellite. Well, he had a hard time grappling it, and it didn't work out, so he had to come back in. And Bob Crippen ended up going as close as he could to the Solar Max and grabbing it with the robotic arm. Terry Hart, I think, was in charge of the robotic arm. And then they pulled it into the payload bay, and they fixed it, over a 2-day period. And there you see one of the astronauts has a band around his leg. So that would tell you that was probably Pinky Nelson, and then the other one is Van Hoften or Ox. It could be the other way around. But there they are actually fixing an electrical component that failed on the Solar Max. It broke down in 1980, so it had been up there for 4 years and awaited repair for more than 3 years. And when they fixed it, it continued to work for another 9 years until it burned up over the Indian Ocean, brought down by atmospheric drag and gravity. So we got 9 more years, we got 5 more years out of science by them fixing this. And this was all depicted in the IMAX movie, The Dream is Alive. And they did a book about that. And many of us have that in our library, that The Dream is Alive. And the IMAX movie was a big deal at the time, too. Solar Max repair mission, STS-13. Now, the 41C, we've talked about that before. that the 4 stands for the fiscal year 1984, which goes from October to October. The 1 is it was launched at Kennedy. 2 would have been a Vandenberg launch in California. And the C is basically A, B, C, D in the progression of the missions. But when NASA would assign flights to missions, they would sometimes get out of sequence because some problem with the orbiter maybe arose and they need to change something out, or with the payload something was delayed. So they didn't go in the order that they wanted to. So actually STS-13 that later become 41C, so the number crunchers at the government accounting office could keep track of the budget better. How weird is that? Because we went back to the number, we quit that number, we went back to the straight numbers after 51L, which of course was the Challenger disaster, and then he was 26. STS-13 was the unlucky 13th one that they built a mission for, and they came up with a patch for Crip, Dick, TJ, Ox, and Pinky. And I've not seen one of these patches. They can go for $40 to $50 when you do see one. Would love to have one. But it was also symbolic of that they landed on April 13th also. And they would rather think of it that way than mission number 13, an unlucky number. Pretty cool patch, huh, Marty? All kinds of special patches as Marty worked on the launch process systems, the engines of the shuttle, and he knows a lot of different sections would do T-shirts and patches and so forth. Marty, we got some comments today?
We got a comment from Joseph Hornickia, if I pronounce him right. And he says, last week I just got through listening to the complete 41C mission coverage. The air-to-ground comms are posted on a National Archives website.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that with us there. And it's posted there in our comments. So you can, NASA Archives website, Marty?
It's on National Archives.
NASA Archives on there. NASA Archive, and you will see all the missions on there. And I go to confirm a lot of data sometimes, but they have an easy launch and landing because they have it in American time, not in Greenwich Mean Time. But thank you very much for that comment, and glad that you're staying curious today. Well, let's see what else we got here, Marty, to end our show. That's just about the end of it there. Thank you all for hanging with us late. We had a very serious computer problem. So, wow, all of our regulars hung in there. Dave Stange, thank you. Larry Pushkar. Zelda Saylor. Hi, Zelda. Glad that you're staying curious. We got Jonathan Minshew Gonzalez. Thank you for being a Stay Curious watcher. Hope that you go back and look at some of the great programming that Marty and I have done. We got Joan Griggs, Marique Zalon. Hi, Marique. Scott Phillips, Alexis Kirklitz, okay. Carlene Charles. Hi, Ashley Kendrick from Tennessee. That's my granddaughter's Meemaw, I think you want to be called. But yes, we have quite a little darling little girl named McKinley, don't we, Ashley? And guess what, Marty? She's a bit of a camera ham. Go figure. Joseph Panica, okay. And Tom Usiak's watching in Orlando. We had him over the other day. Marty, all these new names, we may have to go to a 5 o'clock broadcast time. Maybe we're missing out on some people. But you can always watch us on the past programs on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify and Twitch on their history. Particularly, we've been on YouTube since about July. And go back and look at our wonderful shows that we've done. In fact, a big shout out to Jessica Galloway and her husband, Troy, came in here. We thought the computer had quit. We bought a new computer for our program thanks to the Louise G. West Endowment. And but Troy came in here and got it working. We had to go into the BIOS and the blah, blah, blah of all the computer stuff and get it up there. So we appreciate you, Robert Law, hanging in there. Maybe he's on his second cocktail because we were a half hour late there, Marty. But we really appreciate Robert watching us in Dundee, Scotland. And hope you're having some spring weather there, Robert. And we can't wait to see you here in our museum again. I know he's been here before. So that's a little bit about the Shuttles of April. We got through 5 of them that were launched so far in space history. On the 8th, we've got 2 shuttles launched on there. Let me zoom that up a little bit bigger. 56. And we've got a very interesting thing where Ken Cameron is on 2 missions, a pilot and a commander. And I saw Ken give an excellent talk out at the Visitors Complex over the weekend. And we've got, like I said, the Ochoa. What's Ochoa's first name? What's her first name? Not Ellen Ochoa. And Linda Godwin and Cameron are in space all at the same time on different missions, okay, on the 8th of the month. So that's pretty cool. And I love juxtaposing all this stuff. You know why? Because 300 or more space shuttle astronauts are in our communities. They're doing great things every day to ignite the future generation in our youth and share their beautiful stories of how the shuttle and building the International Space Station has changed our Earth. Everyone on Earth is better because of these 16 missions here. And so thank you for being here. And one other good thing that comes out of it is great people like Nicole Stott here that reminds us to live like a crew and not like passengers, all right? So we appreciate everybody that's watched us on Stay Curious today and hanging in there through some technical difficulties. Marty, thank you for all that you do. Look at the world up here, all right? Isn't it beautiful? So let's take care of it. And let's come back tomorrow. We have got Mikey Haddad is going to be in the museum, and he's going to make a first appearance of many talking about payloads of the month as we talk about Shuttles of April. And Mikey Haddad's going to be here to talk about some of the important payloads, and we're going to have him back time and time again. So you're not going to want to miss that on Stay Curious. So come back tomorrow and see me and Marty and Mikey Haddad to what? Of course, bridge the space between us. Thank you.